The only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time, the ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles, exploding like spiders across the stars. Welcome back to Archer's World of Literature. Today we have a review of Jack Kerouac's On the Road. So this is my first entry to Mr. Jack Kerouac and my first entry to the Beat Generation. I've had a fantastic time with this. I had a few things going on for me in my life, in the last couple of weeks. Starting this channel was one of those things. And so it took me a little bit longer to get through this than I usually would with a book of this size. But I'm actually really grateful that I did take my time with this one, because his writing style is it's so beautifully descriptive of 1940s and 50s America that I think it is a bit of a book where you can take more out of it if you slowly read a couple of chapters a day and just really let it all sink in. And when you're reading this, you really feel like you're there. This does a brilliant job of actually transporting you to 1940s and 50s America. It makes you really feel like you're, in a roadside bar smoking a cigarette and drinking a whiskey and hanging out with your friends and getting kicks and digging things and, hitchhiking and all these things. It makes you really feel like you are these characters. Now, On the Road mainly follows the character Sal Paradise, and his journey with his writing friends and how they sort of meet up together through writing. But it mainly follows his relationship with his friend Dean. We got Dean Moriarty, and as we have the famous ending line here, we have, "I think of Dean Moriarty. I even think of old Dean Moriarty, the father we never found. I think of Dean Moriarty." That quote's not going to make all that much sense if you haven't read it, but if you have, if you know, right? But even just from hearing that, you can kind of understand the poignancy of Kerouac's writing. It's incredible. So yeah, it follows mainly these two characters and how they're just bouncing across from New York to San Francisco to New York to Denver to Iowa to Kansas to Mexico, literally just hitchhiking all across America. It is a staple of Americana literature, at least in my opinion. I think I thought Bukowski was sort of the pinnacle of Americana and putting America down on a page, but this really screams America, North America. It's a brilliant book. I actually read this small print copy, so it was a little bit difficult to read on this one. This is it's a Penguin copy, but it's what is it? Part of the Great Kerouac series. So yeah, it is it's like a small. This is my hand, and if you can see that, it is quite small. But nonetheless, a really, really enjoyable read, and I can't wait to get into more of the Beat Generation. So for those of you that don't know, the Beat Generation is kind of this collective of writers with Jack Kerouac being one of the more prominent ones. And they just wrote together, they drank together, they hung out together, and they all just published these mad books about mad people, just crisscrossing and zooming around America, and it's a lot of fun. I think a really big theme in this book is that Kerouac sort of goes into is kind of being careful about who you surround yourself with. If you read this book, you can kind of see that while Dean is a close friend of Sal Paradise, the main character here, while Dean is a close friend, it is sort of, Sal sort of mentions that he is aware, and all of the people in the little group of characters in here are aware that Dean is a little bit extravagant. He's a little bit, he's a little bit excited. He's a little bit little bit sporadic, but in saying that, Kerouac really goes into the idea as well, sort of the flip side of that, about the importance of, aligning yourself with people who are different to you, people that are going to take you places and possibly will give you experiences that you never would have had without them. I'm really lucky to have quite a number of friends who I can say have done those things for me, sort of pushed me in positive directions I didn't think I would go. Luckily, I don't have too many friends that, maybe in a Dean Moriarty kind of way, they haven't really pushed me into too many negative experiences, thankfully. But, most of the experiences in this that they go through because of Dean, mainly because of Dean, they're not bad, they're not awfully bad. There are a couple of sort of suspicious activities that the characters in this book go through, because the characters in this book were kind of mirrored based on Jack Kerouac and the Beat Generations, their real personalities. These characters were sort of mirrored in sort of a fictionalized biography kind of way. And we can't really ignore the fact that a lot of those members of the Beat Generation have sort of had caught themselves up in some trouble in and amongst, publishing their works in reality, in real life. We have one of the members was caught up in like a manslaughter or a murder or something. I'm not entirely too sure. And Jack Kerouac was actually caught up in that investigation, by association, I believe. They also sort of have, a little bit suspiciously inclined to sort of talking about going to whorehouses and brothels and whatnot. And driving by and seeing pretty lasses down the street and stuff like that. And it is mentioned a couple of times by Dean in particular that, he sees a few young girls around and he sort of makes some unpleasant comments about them, to say the least. And, apparently the members of the Beat Generation in real life were, some of them were a little bit like that, unfortunately. But again, as I always say, that is where the importance of separating art from artist sometimes really is. There's no denying that Jack Kerouac, and I'm sure other members of the Beat Generation that I haven't read that I'm going to find eventually, I'm sure that, they're also as brilliant writers as Mr. Kerouac is. And so I still feel like we can enjoy this piece of literature with, keeping in mind what they may or may not have done in real life, and them sort of aligning themselves with, some suspicious activities. But nonetheless, On the Road by Jack Kerouac was a fantastic read. I'm super glad I'm dipping my toes into this, 1950s American literature, because, a lot of, when it comes to classic books, a lot of them do come from England. A lot of the big ones, England or France, or, Europe, that's where we've been given a lot of great literature from there. And so, when it comes to American literature, I wasn't, too well versed on it, because I was sort of focused on pumping through those, 1800s books, Frankenstein, Charles Dickens, all those sort of things, and a lot of those came from England. But I'm so grateful that I managed to, sort of start dipping my toes into Americana literature, if you will, with, Charles Bukowski, Jack Kerouac, Beat Generation, all those things. So many thanks as well to Jaden at The Street Poet and R.C. Walden for telling me about the Beat Generation. I wasn't really aware of this. I only really started getting back into reading, late last year, if you'll believe it, after sort of having a bit of a stunt in high school, which is another conversation. But, so I wasn't actually really aware of a lot of literary icons or modern literary icons like the Beat Generation, and I'm really glad that I got put on to these guys. So I really am excited to keep going with that. So that has been my review for Jack Kerouac's On the Road. I would really recommend this to people who love traveling books, who love books about friendship, getting up to mischief, all those things. It is full of, it's definitely got a lot of adult content in there. Not too many trigger warnings in here, I would really say. Just normal sort of Kerouac and Bukowski sort of things, sex, drugs, women, those kind of things. But if that doesn't faze you too hard, it's a brilliant read. It's a lot of fun. The importance of friendship and, losing friends and gaining friends watching people's life journey as they, metaphorically and literally are on the road, if that makes any sense. So yes, Jack Kerouac, I believe 1957. Yes, we got first published in the United States of America by Viking Press Incorporated, 1957. On the road. Go and pick it up if you haven't. Amazing stuff. So, thank you so much for watching. As always, stay reading. Peace out.